This weekend post, Cityscapes and the Lighten blending mode. Hey everyone, I'm Scott Davenport and welcome to In Post. Thanks for joining me today. We're going to dive straight in. We're going to do some blending of two photos of a cityscape to kind of bring the best of both worlds, the blue hour together with the nice golden sunlight. And if you didn't watch In the Field earlier this week, go check that out because I talk about how I captured the two different images. And it's got all the details there for, what needs to be done. Fundamentally, it's a waiting game. It's not that hard. You just got to be patient. So I've got these two frames here of, my hometown, San Diego, which reminds me, I have space in my San Diego workshop. You guys should check that out. So here is the main photo that I want to really make the fundamentals of it. I like that the skyline is nicely lit. It's right toward the end of the day. Nice bank of these purplish clouds back there. Now the waterfront's a little bit choppy. I wasn't using a long filter, an ND filter on this to smooth out the water. And then the second photo, I move to the right. This is the same scene at blue hour, and we can see that the lights, the individual lights and windows and some of the borders on the buildings, these green hexagons on this one building in San Diego, those have all come together. So I want to bring those lights into this first photo. So in Lightroom here, I've just done really basic development. Just, fixed the crop, made sure that the angle was straight, applied the lens corrections, and let me just go into the develop module. The one thing I really just wanted to make sure is, at this stage, I'm not losing anything in the exposure. I don't have any clipped highlights, lost shadows for anything that's important. So I'm going to press the J key here really quick, and we're going to see there's clipping on these spectral highlights of the sunshine off of here. That's okay. I'm not expecting any detail on that area. That's fine for my purposes. Everything else is within range, so I'm good to go. So I'm back in the library module, go back into grid view. Select both of these. I want to bring these into a layering package so that I can blend them together. And I'm going to use On1 Layers to do this. You can use any layering software you have so long as it supports the Lighten blending mode. So let me go into File, plug in Extras, and way down here at the bottom, I'll open this as Layers. That'll bring both of these photos into On1 Layers, each on its own layer. And I'll see you on the other side when I get there. All right, so we've landed over in On1 Layers. And as promised, each photo is on its own layer. On the bottom layer, I have my purple skyline, I'll call that. And on the top, I've got the city lights. And let me just name this City Lights, so it's very obvious. Because really all I want from, well, maybe I want two things from this top layer. I certainly want the city lights, those ambient lights. And I also might want to take this the harbor because it's a little bit smoother and less choppy. But let's just work on the lights right now. And I want to show you how this this blending tip works. It's dead simple. I'm going to do two quick things. The first is I'm going to check to see if my layers are aligned. The thing about when you're capturing frames like this, again, go watch the In the Field episode. This can take time. You can spend 30, 40, 50 minutes. And even just a gentle breeze or very slight shifts can cause tiny bits of variation in your framing. So I'm going to zoom in really, really tight here. Actually, I'm going to go even beyond 100%. And just look at the edge of this building right now. And then I turn off this layer. Do I notice a shift? A very slight one. Now, some of that is a trick of the eye with the difference between lights and shadows. But a way to really see it is change the blending mode to difference to start with. Now, see, that's showing me all the differences between these two layers. Now, there's lots of them because the colors are different, the time of day is different. But the edges of the building shouldn't really move. I'll use the transform tool. I'm just going to use the arrows on the arrow key, the arrow keys on the keyboard. And you can see as I move that frame around, I'm getting a little bit less difference in the buildings. And kind of watching this one in particular here, right there where that edge looks really good there. And that's it. It was a tiny little nudge. So I'll apply that. And I'll go back to looking at this normally. Now I know that my layers are aligned. So let's zoom back out. So here's where the magic comes in, right? Let's go back to our hand tool. So we're not doing any transforms. We'll change this over to Lighten. Now look what happens. It's mostly the purple scene. And I've got these little speckles of light that show up in the buildings, right? You see the greens here. You see all this stuff that's right there before and after. And I can tone that down or up with the opacity of the layer. I can do masking and brushing and so forth to really fine tune it. For example, if I really like the full strength here because I like what it's doing for these buildings, but this is too much, I have my masking brush. We can take the opacity down to say, oh, just say half. Make this brush kind of big and paint away some of that. I'm going to undo that for now. To me, that's a little bit too much. Take a little bit of the edge off there, maybe a little bit there. Actually, I think I'll just do it with the opacity. That's going to be simpler. I'll reset my mask and just use the opacity. I think I'm going to dial that opacity down just a little bit more, right around there. Let's do a quick before and after check. Before and after. I like that. It's giving a nice extra amount of ambiance to the city itself. And from here, I can do more styling and add contrast and punch up things. I mentioned I probably will also duplicate this layer and use the water in the foreground and bring that in with your typical blending techniques, gradient masks and so forth. But the thing I want to drive home for you is this Lighten blending mode. So why did this work the way it did? So what Lighten says is compare the layer that I have active, in this case it's my city lights layer, and look at that in comparison to the layer below it. And any pixels that are lighter only show those. Well, when you take a photo after dark, most everything is going to be darker except for those city lights. And so that's why just those lights pop up. The sky didn't get affected. The water, well, maybe got a little bit affected with some, maybe tiny spectral highlights and a light bounce off of a little wave crest or something. You can always brush those away. But that's what's magical about this blending mode, and it lends itself perfectly to making really, really great cityscapes. So I'm going to go off and finish this photo up, and you can see the final photo along with the blog post that I'll have over my website for it. And that's going to do it for this week's In Post. I hope you've enjoyed it. If you did, let me know somehow. Comments on the video below are always great. Questions are great too. And until next time, my name's Scott Davenport. Happy shooting.